Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the smoky, damp and deeply uncomfortable world of a Viking longhouse. Right at the moment when the sun finally disappears behind the fjord, and you, a tired, fish-smelling Norse villager, are trudging your way back home. The air is sharp enough to slice cheese with, your boots are soggy, and your dinner. Well, let's just say you're not going to be dreaming about it later, unless that dream includes lukewarm fish, more fish, and possibly a splinter from your wooden spoon. You're about to spend the night as an average Viking in an average coastal village somewhere around the 9th century. There are no dragons, no axes, no longships setting sail into glory. Just one room, one fire, and a truly unreasonable number of people trying to sleep in the same space as livestock. And you, my brave listener, probably won't survive it. Not with your sanity intact. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and don't forget to post your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've been out since dawn. The day started with a frozen rope, a missing sock, and the realization that the fishing net, your best one, had been gnawed through by something with very small teeth and very large attitude. Mink, probably, or Cousin Olaf's dog. You squinted into the cold morning light, hauled the backup net out of the shed, and trudged your way down to the waterline. The sea did not welcome you. The wind slapped your face like it owed you money. You waded into knee-deep surf that felt like ice, and tried to pretend the ache in your toes wasn't permanent this time. You caught 2 fish. Just 2. One was mostly bones already. The other smelled like it had opinions. Now hours later, you're dragging your creaky self back home. Your fingers are numb. Your nose is running. The salted fish in your sack slaps rhythmically against your leg as you stomp up the slope toward the longhouse, which from a distance looks exactly like what it is. A lumpy wooden rectangle with a thatched roof that's been patched so many times, it resembles a quilt made by someone legally blind. You push open the door and are immediately greeted by the thick, unmistakable scent of Viking domestic life. Boiled cabbage, wet fur, stale air, and an undertone of goat. Inside, the hearth is burning low. Not brightly, not even warmly, just low. The smoke hole above it is supposed to carry the fumes upward, but mostly it just flirts with the idea before blowing smoke sideways into your face. You cough, you blink, you can taste last week's stew in the air. To your left, your aunt is plucking a chicken. On your right, your little brother is hammering a spoon against the floor for no apparent reason. You step over a puddle, of what you don't ask, and make your way to your corner near the back wall, where a very flat, very tired sheepskin is waiting for you. It's your bed. You sit down with a sigh that sounds like a surrender. Dinner is almost ready. You know this because someone just yelled, "It's almost ready," from the direction of the hearth. Your cousin Bjorn, probably. He always says that 20 minutes before it's actually ready. You begin peeling off your outer cloak, shaking out the frost. Your tunic underneath is stiff with sea salt and sweat. You smell like you wrestled a fish and lost. The longhouse is one big room, and everyone's in it. That includes your family, your aunt's family, a widow from down the road who just needs a place for a few nights, a carpenter passing through with questionable intentions, and a blind cat that no one can catch, but everyone hears at night. Plus, of course, the dog. The dog is currently curled up next to the hearth, guarding a bone he did not earn, and growling softly whenever anyone gets too close. Dinner is served. You line up with the others, bowl in hand. The stew is thick tonight. That's a good sign. Less water, more chunks. You ladle yourself a portion and move aside. The bread is hard enough to file your nails with. The salted fish is, well, salty and fishy. But it's warm. That counts for a lot. You sit down cross-legged and start eating. The bowl warms your hands. Your jaw creaks as you bite the bread. Someone sneezes. Someone else coughs. The baby starts crying. Someone, hopefully not the dog, lets out a suspicious noise in the shadows. This is home, this is dinner, and this, somehow, is normal. You glance up at the wooden rafters above, where smoke trails hover like sleepy spirits. You can hear the wind pressing against the walls, like a tired bear leaning on the house for support. A drop of water leaks from the ceiling and lands in your stew. You stir it in. Historians still argue whether Viking longhouses were comfortable by medieval standards. Some believe the shared warmth of people and animals was a clever survival method. Others point out that being stuck in a smoky box with your cousin's feet and a dozen wet cloaks is not anyone's idea of luxury. You eat slowly. The food is plain, but filling. Your muscles relax just a little. Someone farts. You try to pretend it was the dog. It was probably not the dog. After dinner, you wipe your bowl with a piece of bread and finish that too. Waste not. Especially not when you don't know if breakfast will be a meal or just a concept. You settle back into your bedding, which consists of straw, fur, and resignation. The light from the fire dims. People start to shuffle around. Cloaks are wrapped tighter. Someone starts humming. Someone else starts snoring. You close your eyes, knowing that even though you're completely exhausted, sleep won't come easy. Not here, not tonight, not as a Viking. You try to ease yourself down onto the straw mattress without waking anyone, without crunching any mystery objects beneath you, and without inhaling another lungful of smoke. You fail at all three. First, a twig, or possibly an ancient beetroot, snaps under your thigh. Then the straw crackles like 1,000 dry snakes. And finally, just as you're about to relax, a low, smoky draught curls up from the hearth and dives straight into your nose. You sneeze. It echoes. A child stirs. A chicken clucks. You freeze. Welcome back to the Viking longhouse, where sleep is a full contact sport played by every living thing within 4 wooden walls, including livestock. You exhale slowly and try again. This time, you settle your body into something approximating stillness. One leg tucked beneath you, the other pressed between a sheepskin and your cousin's elbow. Your back curves along the drafty wall. Your arm folds behind your head like a lumpy pillow. And your neck, poor thing, twists itself into an unnatural angle to avoid the smouldering heat of the fire. It's not comfortable, but it's familiar. You've slept worse, or so you keep telling yourself. All around you, the room is a low hum of breath and rustle. The fire has died down to glowing coals, casting red shadows that flicker across smoke-darkened beams. You hear the deep, rhythmic snoring of Uncle Bjorn. You hear the wet snuffling of the dog as he dreams. You hear your grandmother muttering nonsense in her sleep. Something about the eel prophecy again. No one knows what it means. No one asks. The air is thick, not just with smoke, but with the smells of the day. There's fish, always fish. Boiled turnips, sweat, wool, leather, goat, and something else you can never quite place. Something sour and sweet and slightly alarming. It's probably the stew, or the goat, or both. You pull your fur blanket closer around your shoulders. It smells like campfire and regret. Then come the elbows. Someone shifts. You're not sure who, but suddenly a knee lands near your ribs, and you're forced to scoot 2 inches closer to the wall. The wall, by the way, is made of rough timber, not barked, just logs. Cold, knobby, and entirely uninterested in your comfort. You rest your head back and close your eyes. It's quiet for exactly 4 seconds. Then the baby cries. It's not a full scream, more of a pre-cry warning siren. A little mewling sound that says, "I might lose it, I might not, we'll see how things go." Someone shushes him. Someone else shushes the shusher. There's a soft thud as someone reaches for something. Maybe a rag, maybe the baby. The mewling continues. Historians still argue whether Viking babies were kept in dedicated cradles or simply swaddled and shoved between 2 sleeping adults for safekeeping. Tonight, it appears to be the latter. The baby finally quiets after someone sings a lullaby that sounds more like a funeral chant. But hey, it works. Just as your body begins to soften into the blanket, you feel something brush against your foot. You freeze. Is it the dog? Nope. The dog is snoring loudly 2 feet to your left. Then it happens again. A soft, deliberate pressure. You lift your head and see it. The goat. Of course. He's supposed to be in the corner tied to the grain bin. But here he is, standing at the foot of your bed, chewing on your other cousin's discarded glove. He meets your gaze with those flat, rectangular pupils. He does not blink. You whisper, "Go away." He does not. Instead, he chews louder. You swear he's doing it on purpose. Nobody moves. Nobody else wakes. The goat and you stare at each other for several seconds, both of you sizing up the situation. You lose. You lie back down and pretend this isn't happening. You close your eyes again. Someone coughs. Someone else farts. Loudly, then sighs with satisfaction. The fire crackles, trying one last time to contribute heat before giving up completely. You shift again. This time, your foot bumps into a pot. Why is there a pot under the bed? You don't know. You don't want to know. You just gently nudge it away, hoping it doesn't contain soup, or something worse. Now the blanket war begins. The fur you brought to bed has gradually migrated south, pulled by unseen forces, or possibly your Aunt Sigrid, who sleeps like a burrito and wraps herself in anything not sailed down. You tug the edge of the blanket back. She grumbles. You tug again. She hisses. You surrender. Again. This is Viking life. Brief victories followed by long, cold defeats. Still, you try to sleep. You count things. Not sheep. That would be weird given that one is literally bleating in the corner. Instead, you count barrels. Fish barrels. You get to 11 before realizing you forgot to factor in the broken one near the door. You start over. You reach 9. Then someone snores. You lose count. You focus on the ceiling. The beams are sturdy, blackened by years of smoke. Between them you can see thatch, layers of reed and turf and mystery substances designed to keep out snow and let out smoke. They mostly fail at both. Through a crack you see a sliver of moon. It looks cold. You start to wonder, why didn't Vikings build chimneys? Surely that would have helped. But historians still debate whether it was due to a lack of architectural innovation, cultural preference, or the sheer stubborn belief that smoke was just part of the charm. Some even claim smoke helped drive out fleas, though judging by the itchy spot behind your knee, that theory needs work. Speaking of fleas, you scratch, then scratch again. You try not to think about it, but it's like the itch multiplies as soon as you acknowledge it. Now your back itches, your ankle itches, your scalp itches. You imagine a tiny flea sitting somewhere behind your ear, sipping your blood like mead and laughing. You sit up and rub your head. This wakes the dog. He blinks at you, stretches, then lies back down, tail thudding softly. You sigh. At least someone's comfortable. You lie down again, pressing your cheek against the fur blanket. It's scratchy, but warm. Someone sneezes. A child coughs. The goat bleats again, softly this time, a sort of bedtime bleat. You finally begin to drift. Your limbs feel heavy, your eyes blur. The sounds blur with them, snoring, crackling, shifting, muttering. It all blends into a strange Viking lullaby. And just when you think you're almost asleep, the rooster crows. Early, very early. You open one eye and silently promise to have words with that bird in the morning. But for now, you simply pull what's left of the blanket over your head, curl deeper into your itchy fur pile and try, one last time, to join your ancestors in a dreamless, smoky, goat-adjacent sleep. The rooster doesn't stop after one crow. Of course not. He goes again, louder, sharper, as if the first call was just a polite warning and this next one is a personal attack on your eardrums. You groan quietly into your fur blanket and pretend he doesn't exist. Maybe if you ignore him, he'll give up. But you and everyone in the longhouse know that's not how Viking roosters operate. A second later, there's movement near the hearth. Someone's up. You hear a long, slow stretch, followed by the unmistakable sound of old knees cracking like dry twigs in winter. It's your grandmother, already rising before dawn, muttering something about the soup needing to be watched. You're not ready for this. Technically, the day hasn't started yet. Outside, it's still mostly dark. A dim silver glow peeks in through the smoke hole above, and a breeze trails in along with it, brushing the tips of your toes, which were never fully inside the blanket to begin with. You wriggle them back in and curl into a tighter knot, determined to hold on to sleep for just a little longer. But the room is stirring. The baby gives a confused grunt. A chicken decides now is the time to flap its wings directly into someone's face. You hear coughing, sniffling, feet rubbing against straw, the squeak of someone's leather tunic as they roll over with a dramatic sigh. The kind of sigh that says, "No, I didn't sleep, but yes, I will pretend I did." You lift your head slowly and blink through the lingering smoke. The hearth fire has faded into glowing orange coals, but your grandmother is already crouched beside it, poking it gently with a stick that doubles as a soup ladle. She's humming something that might be a song or just a rhythmic complaint. You can't quite tell. Beside you, your little brother stirs, lets out a tiny sneeze, and immediately burrows under the blanket like a mole retreating from daylight. You envy him. You sit up, stretch, immediately regret stretching. Your shoulders are stiff, your neck clicks ominously, and your left leg has fallen asleep in protest. You slap it gently to wake it up. It tingles back at you in revenge. Beside the fire, your Uncle Bjorn has begun to stir as well. He grunts as he sits up, scratches his chest like a bear waking from hibernation, and reaches immediately, not for food, not for clothes, but for his axe. It's right there beside his bedding, like a security blanket made of iron and generational trauma. He doesn't plan to use it, probably. It's just comforting, like how you might reach for a cup of tea. His version is just significantly sharper. You drag yourself to your feet and shuffle across the floorboards, stepping carefully around various sleeping legs, bowls, and mystery items. One toe finds something suspiciously soft. You pretend it was straw. At the side wall, a bucket of cold water waits for whoever's brave enough to wash their face first. You dip your hands in. The water bites. Your teeth chatter slightly as you splash it over your cheeks and blink away the sting. You're awake now, unfortunately. You glance around at your fellow Vikings. Some are rising. Others are still clinging to sleep, cloaks pulled over their heads. One of the chickens has decided to perch on a sleeping cousin's shoulder. The goat is somehow standing exactly where it was last night, as if frozen in time, still chewing, still staring, still mildly offended by everything. You make your way back to your corner, grabbing a chunk of hard bread from the communal pile on the table as you go. Breakfast in a Viking longhouse is rarely a feast. More often, it's a formality. A chunk of barley bread, a bite of cheese if you're lucky, maybe a sip of ale or sour milk. If someone really went wild, there might be dried fish involved. Today, it's just bread. You chew slowly, jaw working through the tough crust like a carpenter grinding stone. It's not delicious, but it's solid, filling, functional. The Viking breakfast was never designed for pleasure. It was designed to fuel bodies that would be hauling nets, chopping wood, or rowing across freezing fjords before the sun had time to yawn. Historians still debate what a typical Viking breakfast truly included. Some say it was mostly porridge, oats cooked down with goat milk and sweetened with berries if available. Others insist bread and dried meat were more common. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. But whatever it was, you can be certain of one thing. It was never hot for long. You look down at your bread. Still warm, a minor miracle. Across the room, your cousin Olaf is pulling on his boots, mumbling curses at the laces. One is too tight, one is too loose. He gives up, shrugs, and stands anyway. The baby is now fully awake and screaming like a tiny berserker. Your aunt scoops him up with one hand and her breakfast with the other. multitasking Viking style. Someone opens the door. The wind rushes in like a guest who wasn't invited and knows it. It cuts through the room, sending cloaks flapping and cold shivering. You grit your teeth and hug your blanket tighter. It's cold. But this is the morning. This is how it starts. A room full of tired people with stiff backs, chewing bread that could double as roofing tile, surrounded by livestock and smoke, and yesterday's stew pot that hasn't been washed in 3 weeks. Still, for all its discomforts, there's a kind of peace here, a rhythm. You look around at the sleepy faces, the slow movements, the shared grumbles. Everyone knows what to do. There's no rush, no alarm clock, just chores waiting patiently outside, and a shared understanding that this, for better or worse, is home. You take another bite of bread. The rooster crows again. The goat finally lies down, and for the first time since you tried to sleep, you smile. You finish the last bite of your bread and brush the crumbs from your lap straight onto the floor, where, predictably, one of the chickens immediately rushes to investigate. She pecks once, looks disappointed, and flaps away in a puff of feathers. You're not sure if it's the bread she disliked, or the fact that someone else beat her to the better crumbs. Chickens hold grudges. You've seen them. Around you, the longhouse is stirring. The fire is nearly out, reduced to a dull glow under a heap of ash, and the room has cooled to what might generously be described as crisp. You pull your cloak tighter, pressing your arms to your sides like a bundled turnip. Outside, morning is beginning to creep over the fjord, not in some glorious golden blaze of light, but in that slow, grey way winter mornings do, seeping in through the smoke hole, spilling down the walls, illuminating the edges of fur blankets and wooden beams with reluctant light. You can hear the wind outside already, low, steady, muttering threats through the thatch roof like a moody spirit. Someone should go get firewood. Everyone knows it. No one says it. Your grandmother coughs softly and stirs in her seat by the hearth, as if preparing to issue a decree. You freeze. If she says your name, you're doomed. But no, she leans to one side and warms her hands on a bowl of leftover porridge instead. You breathe out, quietly, but deep down, you know it. It's your turn. You scan the room. Your Uncle Bjorn has vanished, likely off to check fishing traps or possibly just hiding behind the barn. Your cousin Olaf is feigning sleep again, snoring a little too theatrically beneath a fur that doesn't even fully cover him. Your little brother is still burrowed under his blanket, muttering nonsense to himself in a dream about heroic stew-making. The basket for firewood sits beside the door, leaning slightly to one side as though even it is reluctant to face the cold. You stand up, grab the basket and trudge toward the exit. The second the door opens, winter hits you full in the face. The wind doesn't gently breeze past, it shoves, it bites. It finds every gap in your clothing and floods in like it's chasing something. You gasp and stumble back a step, but you're committed now. You step outside, the crunch of snow beneath your boots sharp and clean. The morning light is barely there, just a hazy smear behind thick clouds. The longhouse casts a hunched, dark silhouette behind you, its thatched roof dusted with a layer of frost that crackles softly as the wind shakes it. The path to the barn is uneven, pocked with footprints frozen solid overnight. You step carefully, basket bouncing against your hip, breath coming in bursts of white that drift behind you like small ghosts. The woodpile waits by the barn, half buried, lopsided, and today, a little further away than you remember. You reach it and start stacking logs into the basket. First the thin kindling, then a few larger chunks. The wood is damp, your fingers sting. You try not to think about how much colder it will get before spring arrives, and then you hear it. A low, familiar squawk from behind. The rooster. There he is, perched on a fence post, feathers puffed against the cold, eyes narrowed like he's assessing your soul. He shifts slightly, his claws scraping the wood, and lets out another noise, something between a challenge and a yawn. You nod respectfully and keep stacking. never engaged directly with the rooster. He's seen things. Back at the longhouse, you knock 3 times with your boot, and someone, probably your grandmother, pulls the door open just wide enough for you to squeeze through. You bring with you a gust of cold air, a few snowflakes, and the distinct scent of damp wood. A chorus of groans follows. You mutter an apology and dump the logs beside the hearth. You kneel beside the ashes, blowing gently to expose the glowing embers beneath. You place kindling over them, then a few dry twigs, then a single patient log. You strike flint against steel until a spark catches. The fire winks at you, just once, then flickers, sighs, and begins to breathe again. There is something sacred about a fire coming back to life. Everyone in the room shifts a little closer, like moths drawn to hope. Your grandmother offers you a nod of approval, the Viking version of a standing ovation. You sit back, flexing the feeling back into your fingers, and someone hands you a bowl. Porridge. You expected it. You hoped for it. You got it. It's hot, thin, and smells faintly of goat milk and smoke. You take a bite. It tastes like it always does. Bland, functional, honest. The kind of breakfast that doesn't pretend to be exciting but gets the job done. Historians still argue about what Vikings really ate for breakfast. Some claim it was hearty stews left simmering overnight. Others insist on sour porridge, dried fish, or barley cakes. It probably varied depending on the season and your social rank, but one thing is certain, it wasn't luxurious. Across the fire, your cousin Olaf has risen from his fake slumber and is now stretching dramatically, hoping to be mistaken for someone who's already worked. You roll your eyes, but silently. No need to start a morning feud, not before second porridge. A child squeals from across the room. Someone's discovered a missing sock tucked inside a bowl. A few people chuckle. The dog perks up, hoping it's edible. You take another bite, feeling the warmth settle in your chest. The fire crackles. The room hums with quiet activity. A woman braids her hair beside the hearth. A man sharpens a knife with slow, careful strokes. The children gather around an elder who has started reciting a story in a voice so gravelly it could sand furniture. You lean back against a post and let your eyelids droop. The chores will come soon, splitting logs, mending nets, chasing chickens that aren't where they're supposed to be. But not just yet. For now, you're warm, fed, and surrounded by the soft, creaky rhythm of Viking morning. You don't get long to enjoy the peace. Someone stands up too fast and knocks over a wooden bowl. It clatters to the floor, startling the chicken that was sneakily roosting under a bench. She explodes in a flurry of feathers and indignant squawking, running straight across your cousin's lap, leaving behind one glorious gift, a warm, fresh egg, and a few small regrets. Laughter bubbles up. Even your grandmother chuckles from behind her bowl of porridge, her shoulders shaking under the layers of wool and age. It's not a big moment, but it's something. And in a Viking longhouse in the dead of winter, something is plenty. Once breakfast is over, the morning truly begins. Everyone moves slowly at first. There's no rush, but there is rhythm. Chores are done in a practice sequence that's equal parts necessity and survival. You grab a rough wool tunic from the pegs on the wall, still stiff from yesterday's wind, and pull it over your linen underlayer. The fabric is scratchy, but at least it's dry. That counts for a lot around here. You wrap your belt tight around your waist. Leather, handmade, slightly cracked from years of wear. From it hangs a small knife in a carved wooden sheath, your most useful tool, and also your default spoon when others go missing, which they do, often. Viking spoons are notorious for wandering off during the night. Historians still argue whether this was due to poor storage or mischievous spirits. You suspect it's just Olaf stealing them. Your boots are where you left them, which is a miracle. You slip them on, stiff leather stuffed with straw for insulation, and lace them with frozen fingers, grunting slightly as the cold bites through. Someone opens the door again, and a gust of winter wind surges through the room. blowing out the tiniest fire in the corner used for warming a pot of leftover broth. A toddler shrieks, convinced the wind is a spirit come to scold him. His mother scoops him up and gives the wind a scolding right back. Viking mothers do not tolerate nonsense, even from the elements. You step outside again, this time on purpose. The sky has lightened to a washed-out silver. The fjord is visible now, framed by dark pine trees and shimmering slightly under a thin crust of ice. It's beautiful. Cold, brutal, but beautiful. You breathe in through your nose and feel your nostrils threaten to stick together. Today's tasks will be many. The fishing nets must be checked, dragged up from the ice water and carefully untangled. The axe handle needs rewrapping. The last time you used it, the leather grip slipped, and you nearly took out Olaf's kneecap instead of the log. There are turnips to sort, furs to scrape, and someone has to go to the next farmstead over to barter for more beeswax. You hope it's not you. The snow is deep in the hills, and the last person who made that trip returned with blue toes and a lifelong grudge against pine cones. Still, you take a moment to appreciate the silence. The only sound is the slow creak of the longhouse settling in the cold, and the distant call of a raven flying overhead. It circles once, then veers off toward the sea. You watch it go, wondering briefly if ravens ever get cold. Then again, maybe they're just too proud to show it. Inside, the longhouse has returned to its usual rhythm. A low hum of voices, the clink of wooden bowls, the shuffle of cloaks. You duck back in and set about gathering the tools you'll need. A worn net, a small sack for any catch, a crooked knife you keep meaning to sharpen, and, for luck, a tiny carved Thor's hammer your uncle gave you years ago. It hangs from a cord around your neck, heavy with meaning, light enough to forget it's there until you need to remember. You sling the net over your shoulder and step outside again. This time, the dog follows you, his tail wagging in slow, dignified sweeps. He's part shepherd, part hunter, part philosopher, his eyes full of knowledge he'll never share, unless it's to tell you where he buried your missing mitten. You reach down and scratch behind his ears. He leans into it, just a little, then snorts and trots ahead. You make your way toward the shoreline. The path is familiar. Stone, snow, the occasional route that always trips someone at least once a week. The wind blows in from the sea, sharp and steady, carrying the scent of salt and old kelp. Your boots sink slightly into the packed snow with each step. You adjust your grip on the net and keep moving. By the time you reach the water's edge, your cheeks are numb, but your arms are warm from the walk. You squat near the dock, loop the net's edge over your wrist, and begin the slow, careful work of hauling it in. It's frozen in places. You have to tug, twist, knock off bits of ice. Your fingers ache, but the repetition keeps your thoughts focused. This is the part of Viking life no one talks about in the sagas. The waiting, the tugging, the numbness that settles into your wrists. You finally free the last section and lay it out across the dock's edge, checking for holes. A few fish are caught in the lower knots, small ones, silver and twitching. You pluck them free and drop them into your sack. They won't feed a whole house, but they'll add something to the stew. Historians debate whether most Viking fishers worked alone or in small crews. You know from experience that even when others are nearby, the work always feels solitary. The cold makes conversation difficult. The sea doesn't care to keep you company. You sling the net to dry and sit down on the dock for a moment, just watching the slow rise and fall of the tide under the ice. The dog sits beside you, sniffing the breeze. Neither of you says anything. Eventually you stand, stretch your back and head home. The longhouse greets you with a puff of smoke and the smell of something boiling. You open the door, step inside, and let the warmth settle around your shoulders like a friend who never left. The moment you step back into the longhouse, your cheeks tingling from the cold and your fingers stiff around the sack of fish, you're wrapped in a wave of warm, smoky air. It smells of damp wool, hearth smoke, and something suspiciously cabbage-adjacent that's been boiling for a very long time. You pause by the threshold, letting your eyes adjust to the dim interior again. The orange glow from the fire flickers against the timber walls, casting long shadows and catching the glint of iron tools hanging near the door. Inside, the house has shifted into daytime mode. Blankets are folded and tucked away. Wooden bowls are being scrubbed with handfuls of snow near the hearth. Someone is already mending a boot. Another is sitting cross-legged, carefully scraping sinew from a deer hide, the blade in her hand moving in practiced, confident strokes. You duck past them, holding up the small sack. Your grandmother eyes it from across the room. 3 fish, she asks, not accusing, just noting. You nod. 3 good ones, you reply. She grunts in a way that could mean agreement or disappointment. It's hard to tell. You hand off the fish to your younger brother, who wrinkles his nose as he takes the slippery bundle. He's in charge of cleaning them today. You remind him to keep the bones. They'll be added to the broth later, and the heads might be dried for future use. Nothing goes to waste, not when winter's only halfway done. You shake the last bits of ice off your cloak and hang it on a peg near the door. Your boots come off next, thudding onto the floor with a soft puff of snow. As you wriggle your toes inside your socks, trying to coax sensation back into them, you notice the dog has returned to his usual spot by the hearth, curled in an almost perfect circle, one eye cracked open just enough to make sure you're not sneaking food. You glance at the cauldron above the fire. It's bubbling now, steam curling up into the rafters and finding its way out the smoke hole, mostly. A wooden ladle sits propped nearby, and you know if you lean in close enough the rising warmth will sting your cheeks in a way that's almost pleasant. You do, and it does. The stew smells better than usual. Maybe someone added wild herbs, or maybe it's just because you're hungry again, and everything smells better when your fingers are thawing. You settle onto a low bench and stretch your legs. Around you, the quiet thrum of the household continues. The goats outside bleat, muffled by the thick walls. Someone sharpens a blade in the corner, rhythmically scraping steel against stone. You hear the cluck of a hen that's wandered too close to the cooking pot, and the exasperated shuffle of feet chasing it away. Your cousin Olaf, always late to responsibility, finally emerges from beneath a fur cloak, hair sticking out in 6 different directions, eyes bleary. Is it still morning? He asks, no one in particular. You hand him a cup of cold water and say, barely. He grunts, drinks, and begins the slow, painful process of pretending he was always awake. Viking mornings are long. Not because there's too much to do, but because there's just enough to do that your body never truly rests, never fully stops moving. If you aren't hauling water, you're cutting firewood. If you aren't cleaning fish, you're weaving, carving, repairing, boiling, drying, salting, scraping. And yet, despite the labour, everything moves with a kind of sleepy slowness. No one rushes, no one panics, the cold won't let you. Historians often debate just how structured Viking domestic life was. Did each person have assigned chores, or was it simply a communal agreement? Do what needs doing, and don't complain too loudly. The truth, as you know, lies somewhere in the warmth between those two extremes. Everyone knows what needs doing, and when you do it, someone else does the next thing. That's how the longhouse breathes. You take a small carving knife from the beam beside you, and pick up a piece of driftwood from the pile near the hearth. It's soft and pale, salt-smoothed by years in the sea. You begin carving absent-mindedly, nothing fancy, just whittling the end into a rough spiral while your body slowly warms. Carving is a quiet pleasure in the longhouse, not flashy, not urgent, but peaceful. You've seen your grandmother carve beads from bone, and your uncle shape spoon handles like little longships. You mostly make spirals, and once, a horse that looks suspiciously like a cow. Across the fire, someone laughs. A real laugh. Sharp. Sudden. It catches you off guard. Turns out the baby has managed to pull off Olaf's wool hat and is now waving it around like a victory banner. Olaf looks horrified. The baby looks triumphant. For a moment, the room warms not from fire but from sound. You smile. Then someone enters the longhouse, ducking under the low lintel. It's your neighbour, Eric. stomping snow from his boots and brushing frost from his beard. He's carrying a bundle wrapped in fur. Everyone perks up. Gossip travels faster than sunlight in this village, and a surprise visitor with a bundle means one of three things: a message, a trade, or a very peculiar animal. Turns out, it's a trade. Eric unwraps the bundle and reveals 3 small beeswax candles, a pinch of dried juniper, and, miraculously, a handful of hazelnuts. You haven't seen hazelnuts in weeks. The room leans forward. Even the chickens get interested. In exchange, he wants leather strips and a small sack of barley. Fair, given the snow. Your grandmother eyes the candles, then nods. The trade is struck. Hands shake. Nuts are distributed. You get one, and it feels like a feast. You crack it between your teeth. Crunchy, sweet, cold from the journey, but still better than anything you've had in days. Afternoon light is leaking in through the cracks in the wall now, soft and hesitant. It paints the straw in golden streaks and catches in the steam from the pot. The stew is ready. One by one, everyone takes a turn. Bowls are filled, bread is broken, and the longhouse, this smoky, crowded, drafty, wonderful mess of people and feathers and goats, settles into its own version of lunch. You sit, bowl in hand, legs tucked under you, the dog curled at your side, and for just a moment, everything is still, everything is warm, and no one, not even Olaf, is complaining. Lunch in the longhouse isn't loud or hurried. It arrives not with ceremony, but with the quiet clinking of wooden bowls and the bubbling of the stew pot over a crackling fire. Everyone eats in a slow, almost meditative rhythm. No one gulps, no one rushes. In a Viking winter, there's no reason to hurry through warmth. You sit cross-legged near the hearth, your bowl cradled in your hands, letting the steam rise into your face like a gentle fog. It smells faintly of fish, onion, and whatever root vegetable managed to survive storage this deep into the season. It's not glamorous, but it's enough. You scoop up a piece of soft turnip with your spoon, carved from antler, the tip slightly chipped from an argument it had with a too-tough loaf of barley bread last week, and let the warmth fill your chest. The stew is mostly broth, with a few stubborn herbs clinging to the sides of the bowl. You're not sure whether they're parsley or something else, but they taste green and honest, like they came from a dirt patch with opinions. Around you, the longhouse hums. Your cousin Olaf, never quiet for long, slurps his stew dramatically, swishing it around his mouth like a connoisseur of fishy soup. "Ah," he declares, "the chef has outdone herself." Your grandmother snorts but doesn't look up. She's heard worse. She hands him another chunk of bread, which he accepts with mock reverence. The dog sneezes. Someone chuckles. Someone else sneezes back. Lunch is not just a meal. It's a pause. A space in the middle of a frigid day where the warmth of fire, family and food briefly softens the world's edges. For a moment, even the wind outside seems to hush, allowing the longhouse to exist in a rare pocket of stillness. You take another bite. The broth clings to the spoon, thickened slightly from the barley added earlier that morning. It's grainy, hearty, and has a texture that would make modern food critics weep softly into their napkins. But to you, it's perfect. Not because of what it is, but because of what it means. It means you're not hungry. It means someone stirred the pot. It means someone remembered to check the herbs, and someone else shared a handful of salt from the communal pouch. It means the longhouse still works. After everyone's eaten, the bowls are rinsed. No fancy dishwashing here, just a scoop of snow, a rub of straw, and a wipe of wool. The water is too precious to waste. Clean enough is good enough. The spoons are set to dry near the fire, lined up like soldiers resting between battles. You set your bowl aside and stretch your arms overhead, hearing your shoulders crack like frozen branches. Around you, people rise one by one and slide back into their tasks, each movement slow but sure. There's no rush, only rhythm. That's the Viking way. You don't sprint through chores. You pace yourself like a longship rowing against the current. Your job this afternoon is spinning wool. Not glamorous, not thrilling, but vital. The longhouse needs new thread, strong enough to mend cloaks, patch sails, and reinforce the edges of the sleeping mats that always fray near the toes. You settle near your grandmother, who's already spinning, her spindle bobbing like a pendulum in slow motion. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. She passes you a bundle of unspun wool, soft, tangled, stubborn. You take it. Fingers finding the rhythm like they've done 100 times before. Twist, pull, twist. Feed it through. Don't yank, don't rush. The fire snaps behind you. Someone yawns. Someone else starts humming softly. A tune you don't recognize but somehow already know. Outside, the wind howls, testing the gaps in the wall. It slips in now and then through the thatch, sending shivers down spines and causing a few people to adjust their cloaks. But the fire holds strong, and the spinning continues. Historians still debate whether Viking women did most of the spinning, or whether men took up the spindle during the long winters when war and farming paused. Some say only the elderly spun. Others suggest it was shared. Whoever had time, whoever had hands. In this longhouse, it's shared. Because thread means survival, and survival doesn't care who twisted the fibre. You twist, you pull, you feed the wool. A knot forms. You curse softly. Your grandmother raises one eyebrow without turning her head. You sigh and start again. Time blurs when you're spinning. The world shrinks to fibre and motion, breath and fingers. Your thoughts quiet. Your shoulders drop. You find that strange sense of rest that only comes when your hands are busy but your mind is free to drift. You think about summer, about the smell of grass on the hills and the feel of cold river water around your ankles. You think about the feast last autumn when someone roasted a whole goat, and Olaf tried to wear the skull like a helmet and scared the dog so badly it ran into the stew pot. You think about the raven you saw this morning, circling above the fjord, black against the pale sky. You wonder if it's watching you still. Eventually the bundle of wool runs thin in your hand. You tie off the thread and pass it to your grandmother, who nods once, her version of applause. You reach for another handful of wool. You glance across the longhouse. Olaf is carving something into a piece of driftwood, probably another attempted boat that will never float. A child naps curled beneath a fir. Someone is patching a torn sleeve with red thread that stands out like blood on snow. The dog dreams by the hearth, one paw twitching, and the goat has reappeared. It's standing beside the cauldron again, staring at the stew with the intensity of someone who has questions about the ingredients. No one moves it. No one tells it to leave. It's just the goat. It belongs here, in the way that old shoes and quiet arguments do. Evening begins to approach, soft and creeping. Shadows stretch. The sky dims beyond the smoke hole. The fire glows deeper. People shift closer together, and still you spin, twist, pull, feed, until the light changes, and the day begins to fold itself closed. By the time you look up from your spinning, the daylight outside has faded into a dusky hush, like someone slowly drawing a heavy wool curtain across the sky. Inside the longhouse, the light has changed too. The fire is no longer just warmth, it's illumination. Orange and gold flicker across every surface, throwing playful shadows that dance along the walls and ripple over faces. The air is thicker now, wrapped in the scent of smoke, fir, and the lingering tang of stew. You place your spindle down with a small sigh. Your fingers are sore. Nothing serious, just the dull, honest ache of a day spent coaxing thread from wool. You flex them slowly and feel the tightness in your knuckles begin to loosen. Around you, the hum of the household begins to shift again. People's movements are slower now, more deliberate, as the energy of the day winds itself down like the soft whir of a dropped spindle. You lean back against one of the thick support beams and glance around. Olaf is playing with the dog. waving a strip of hide above its nose while the dog growls half-heartedly, too tired to commit to the game but not willing to give it up either. Your younger brother is trying to braid a bit of cord with more enthusiasm than skill, his tongue poking out in concentration. The goat has made a reappearance, once again standing too close to the stew pot, eyeing it like it's planning a heist. You decide to do a quick sweep of the floor. The broom is leaning near the wall, its bundled straw head well worn but still capable. You rise, stretch, and begin pushing the debris of the day into a central pile. Bits of wool, wayward feathers, wood shavings, and a single bootlace that no one's claimed since breakfast. A hen clucks disapprovingly from the shadows and hops onto a bench to avoid your path. You mutter an apology. She fluffs her feathers like a queen slighted. The wind outside howls again, not as angrily as before, more like a tired sigh slipping between the thatch. You step outside briefly to shake the debris from the broom and feel the bite of evening air on your cheeks. The world beyond the door is wrapped in soft twilight, the snow underfoot glowing faintly like it remembers the sun. The stars are starting to show, just a few at first, shy and blinking, but soon they'll scatter across the sky in full. You close the door behind you and return to the warmth. Inside, someone's feeding the fire again. A new log is placed carefully onto the embers. It catches slowly, with a soft whoosh and a hiss of sap. The crackle is comforting, like a familiar voice telling you everything's going to be all right, even if your boots are still wet and there's a hole in your mitten. Your grandmother hums quietly in the corner, a slow, repeating melody, the kind that has no beginning and no end. You've heard it since childhood. It's not a song with words, at least not anymore. It's just a sound that feels like home, like fur blankets, like salt on your lips, like stories told by candlelight. Speaking of stories, it's about that time. Evening is for tales, not lessons, not lectures. Tales. The kind that start with a chuckle and end with a shrug. The old man in the far corner clears his throat and begins. No one tells him to. No one asks. He just knows. The room quiets. Even the dog lifts its head. His voice is rough like driftwood and just as weathered but steady. Tonight he tells a tale of a Viking who tried to outwit a troll by pretending to be his own brother. It involves 3 sacks of flour, a talking sheep, and a suspiciously intelligent chicken. You've heard it before. Everyone has. But that's never the point. Each time the story bends, a detail changes, a line is added. Sometimes the troll grows taller, sometimes the chicken gains a monocle. Historians still debate the exact structure and consistency of Viking oral storytelling. But you know better. Stories are living things. They change like people do, growing, softening, sometimes getting funnier, sometimes sadder, always true in ways that facts aren't. The tale rolls on. People lean back against the walls, some lying down with the arms behind their heads, eyes closed, just listening. The children sit cross-legged at the elders' feet, wide-eyed, mouthing lines they already know. Someone stirs the pot lazily, though there's nothing left inside. It's just something to do with their hands. You curl your legs beneath you and rest your chin on your knees. The fire crackles, the shadows dance, and the goat, ever the mystery, lies down near the hearth and closes its eyes, either soothed by the voice or pretending to be a rug. The story reaches its climax. The troll is tricked, of course, and the Viking wins, but not before accidentally marrying the troll's daughter, who turns out to be a fabulous cook but terrible at riddles. Everyone laughs. The old man grins and sips from a carved cup. The story is done, but no one moves right away. Even laughter is slow here. A bowl of broth makes its rounds, just a sip each. Not because there's a rule, but because sharing is how you stay whole. You pass it along, the rim warm from many hands. When it reaches you, you take a sip and find the taste oddly sweet, like something from memory. Someone else begins another story. This one's quieter, more meandering, about a fox that stole a fisherman's boots and started a war between villages. Half the room falls asleep before it ends. You don't. You sit there, still and calm, listening to the rise and fall of the voice, the soft snores, the coals collapsing into each other, the wind whispering through the thatch like an old friend telling secrets. Your eyes close just for a second. You feel the glow of the fire on your cheeks, the weight of the day sliding from your shoulders, and in that moment, as the story continues and the shadows stretch longer across the floor, you realise something. You are safe. You are warm. You belong here, and night has finally arrived. Night in a Viking longhouse is a creature of its own. It doesn't crash in like a sudden storm or slide quietly like a mist. It creeps. It oozes in through every crack in the timber walls, coils in the rafters, and settles around shoulders like a heavy wool cloak you didn't quite ask for. Inside, the fire glows low and red, the kind of light that doesn't cast shadows. It swallows them. What was earlier a space of activity and movement becomes stillness, layered with sleep and warmth and the quiet discomfort of too many bodies in too small a space. You should be asleep by now. Most people are. You're not. It's not the cold that's keeping you awake. Not really. Though the air has a sharp bite, and your toes have begun that slow tingle of losing heat, you've wrapped yourself in your thickest cloak, curled tight beneath your shared fur, and wedged yourself between your brother on one side and the chicken on the other. Yes, the chicken. Hilda, of course. She has once again claimed your ankles for herself, nestling her warm, feathered body exactly where your feet want to be. You tried moving her earlier. Once. It didn't end well. She made a sound like an insulted noblewoman and flapped her wings directly into your face. Since then, you've made peace with being slightly uncomfortable. Her claws may be sharp, but she is warm and loyal and never snores, which is more than you can say for your Uncle Bjorn. Bjorn is already deep into what the family has started calling his night symphony. It begins innocently enough, one soft snort, a little flutter of breath, and then escalates. The first movement is always a gurgling inhale followed by a whistle. The second movement features a full-bodied snore that rattles his chest and sometimes, you swear, the rafters. And by the third, you're in a duet with the wind outside, who seems to have chosen this exact hour to practice its haunting vibrato down through the smoke hole. You bury your head deeper under the fur, it doesn't help. Someone, not naming names, but it might be Olaf, lets out a dramatic sigh and mutters, "Again?" before rolling over. The sigh is picked up by someone else, who groans and shifts their position. The goat, who has made a quiet nest for itself near the hearth, lifts its head and stares across the room like a disappointed elder, then settles again with the faintest snort of judgment. The sounds of a Viking longhouse at night are numerous. You've got your standard snores ranging in tone from small bear hibernating to drunken troll lost in a cave. You've got the creaking of the floorboards as people shift in their sleep, the rustling of cloaks, the occasional hiccup from the baby across the room, who seems to dream of eating, judging by the tiny smacking sounds coming from their fur bundle. And of course, you've got Olaf's endless sleep talk. Tonight, it's about bread. "Don't forget the salt," he mumbles. "Too much flour and it gets angry." No one knows who it is, but we've all accepted that Olaf's dreams are not our dreams to question. You roll over, then roll back, then again. It's not just the noise, it's the fact that this is normal. This is how your people sleep. Packed together for warmth and protection, sharing space, air, dreams, and sometimes, unfortunately, breath. Historians like to imagine Viking warriors, stoic and silent, drifting into sleep with swords by their sides. In truth, most of them probably fell asleep to the exact same chorus you're enduring now. Still, despite the discomfort and the orchestra of nasal music, there's something comforting about it. You can hear your brother breathing, soft and steady. You can feel the rise and fall of the fire's warmth across your cheeks. You can smell smoke and pine resin, and just a hint of goat. You can hear your grandmother's soft humming. Not a song exactly, but a tune older than memory. probably meant to soothe children or maybe herself. She's still awake, sitting up against the central beam like she always does. A guardian of the hearth, a lighthouse in the longhouse. The wind outside picks up. It whistles down from the hills and slides between the thatch and timber. It scratches lightly at the door, not quite enough to worry anyone, but just enough to remind you that the world outside is colder than you remember. The longhouse creaks a little, like an old man sighing in his sleep. You sit up briefly, just to glance around. It's a strange thing to see everyone like this. People who yell during the day are curled quietly now, lips parted, breath fogging faintly in the cold air. The baby is tucked into its mother's side, wrapped in furs so thoroughly it resembles a loaf of bread with eyes. Even Olaf, who earlier claimed he would never fall asleep in this freezing cave, is now sprawled on his back, mouth wide open, muttering about someone stealing his fish. You lie back down and close your eyes. You count the sounds: snore, crackle, breath, snore, goat shuffle, baby squeak, snore. Somewhere in the back of your mind, a thought rises. You've survived another day. The work was done. The fire held. No one froze. No wolves came. The stew didn't burn. You are here, breathing, whole. There's an odd calm in that realization. A Viking night isn't peaceful in the quiet sense, but it is secure. You are wrapped in history, in bodies, in heat, in the strange comfort of shared humanity. Hilda stirs. She pecks gently at your ankle. You shift. She settles again. The wind outside howls once more, louder this time, as if to remind the world of its presence. But the longhouse does not flinch. It stays firm, built of wood, sweat, and stubbornness, sealed with moss and sealed again with hope. You breathe in slowly, and this time you let yourself float. The snores continue. The fire sighs. The goat dreams. And you, tucked beneath hide and beside a chicken, finally sleep. Because somehow, impossibly, even in the noise, the cold, the straw, the aching muscles and the elbow in your ribs, you have found the thing most elusive in any century. Rest. You wake slowly, not with a start or a scream, but the way old wood shifts after a long silence. Your eyes blink open into the dim hush of a Viking winter morning, the air still thick with the smell of smoke and wool and something faintly fishy. Probably the stew, which, in a feat of culinary stubbornness, has now survived into a third day. Your back aches slightly. The floor, even padded with straw and pelts, has a way of pressing itself into your bones. You stretch your legs, trying not to disturb the warm little creature nestled near your ankles. Hilda, of course. She gives a small, offended cluck as you move. You whisper an apology. She returns to sleep. All around you, the longhouse lies in a quiet, not quite silence. Not everyone is awake, but not everyone is asleep either. The room breathes, slowly, steadily, as if it too is stretching its limbs after a long smoky slumber. Your Uncle Bjorn snores softly now, less volcanic than the night before. His head has lolled to the side, mouth open, beard tangled like seaweed. Next to him, someone murmurs in their sleep about goats. Another voice coughs once, clears their throat and falls silent again. You remain still for a moment, watching the soft orange light flicker from the hearth. The fire's been stoked. That means your grandmother is already up. She always is. Somehow she's existed since before time itself, and will probably remain long after. You picture her now, crouched beside the coals, coaxing the fire to life with patient breath and fingers like tree roots. The house depends on that fire, on her. You all do. You sit up slowly. The cloak you slept under falls from your shoulders like a tide withdrawing. The cold hits you immediately, biting, insistent, familiar. Your breath fogs in front of your face, and the air smells sharper than it did in the night. You pull your cloak tighter and glance toward the fire. She's there, of course, tending to a pot with that same look she always has, somewhere between quiet amusement and a permanent dare for you to question her methods. She nods once in your direction, the Viking version of a cheerful "good morning." You nod back, you stand, roll your shoulders, and walk barefoot across the uneven floor, avoiding the loose board near the goat. It squeaks when stepped on, and the goat hates being surprised. It also, unfortunately, remembers. Outside, the sky's lighter, not sunny, not even bright, but grey, in a way that suggests daytime is trying its best. A thin beam of light filters through the smoke hole in the roof, catching the dust in the air and turning it to gold. You gather your boots from near the door and slip them on. They're stiff from the cold, and it takes effort to wrestle your feet into them. You grimace. Yesterday's snow is still clinging to the fur trim, now frozen into brittle lace. You push open the wooden door and step outside. The air is frigid and shockingly clean, as if the wind has scrubbed the world overnight. The snow crunches under your feet. You exhale slowly and watch your breath drift upward in a lazy spiral. There's no one else out yet, not even Olaf, and the landscape is untouched except for the soft indentations of goat hooves. You walk to the edge of the path near the shed, where the ice-covered stream is just beginning to hint at a thaw. Kneeling down, you break a thin layer of ice with a stick, scoop some water into your cupped palms and splash your face. The cold is a slap, but it clears the fog from your mind. Welcome to the Viking morning routine. Returning inside, the heat from the fire greets you like an old friend who refuses to leave. The longhouse is busier now. Olaf has emerged, hair sticking up like he fought a bear in his sleep, and lost. He scratches his chin and mutters something about needing stronger dreams. You hand him a bowl and point toward the pot. Breakfast, in Viking terms, is function over flavour. The stew has taken on a new life. Thinner, with a different scent this time. Someone might have added fish oil, or more onions, or possibly regret. You ladle it into your bowl and find that it steams in a comforting way, even if it tastes like history. You sit near the fire, bowl in hand, and sip carefully. It's hot, slightly sour, nourishing. You don't complain. Around you, the room returns to life. Someone begins sweeping again, chasing straw and soot into the corner. Someone else sits down with a needle and a torn mitten. 2 children chase a chicken, probably not Hilda, who knows better, and knock over a wooden spoon in the process. A conversation starts about the weather. You think it'll storm again? Of course it will, it always does. Well, maybe this time it'll be kind. It's the weather. It has no kindness. You smile. That's as hopeful as Vikings get before noon. You finish your breakfast and bring your bowl to the pile near the wash basin. It'll be cleaned later, probably with snow and a bit of sand. You step outside again, this time with Olaf. Both of you assigned the noble task of firewood duty. The axe is already there, sticking out of the chopping block like it belongs to the earth. Olaf picks it up dramatically as if he's drawing a sword. Time, he says solemnly, to defeat the trees. You shake your head. You stack. He chops. The rhythm is familiar. So is the occasional complaint when a log turns out to be knotty and hard as iron. You respond by humming the troll song your grandmother used to sing when the fire wouldn't catch. Olaf groans. The goat from its perch near the door looks impressed. You return with the firewood. The warmth you carried out into the cold is replaced by a new ache in your arms and a slight burning in your legs. It feels good. Honest. Back inside, the stew is gone, the bowls are stacked. The chores continue. Someone begins weaving. Someone sharpens knives. Someone tends to the goats, who have once again claimed the warmest corner. You sit again, your cloak wrapped around your shoulders, and breathe it in. This morning was hard. This morning was cold. But you lived it, and you'll live the next one too. Because here in this longhouse, in this world of ice and wood and fire and family, surviving the morning is not a small thing. It's everything. Mid-morning has its own tempo inside a Viking longhouse. Not hurried. Not exactly slow either. More like the gentle sway of a boat resting between waves. Steady, deliberate, with just enough friction to remind you that the day is moving whether you are or not. After the first chores are done and breakfast has warmed everyone's insides, the house shifts from sleep to productivity in that uniquely Viking way. Practical, communal, and just a little bit chaotic. You're kneeling near the back wall, repairing your cloak with a dull needle, and a frayed piece of thread that's doing its very best to fall apart in your hands. There's a chill on your neck where the tear is, so you're motivated. You work with fingers half numb from the morning cold, using short, careful stitches like your grandmother taught you. Every so often you prick your thumb. You don't curse aloud. That earns you the eyebrow. Beside you, your younger brother is attempting to refill the straw in one of the sleeping mats. He starts with enthusiasm, shaking out the old lumpy straw, fluffing the new bundle with a flourish, and then, almost predictably, loses focus and starts arranging the straw into the shape of a dragon. "It needs wings," he mumbles to himself. You nod without looking up. You can relate. Across the room, someone sneezes, then someone else. The dust stirred up from all the straw and fur has begun to make its rounds. A third sneeze follows, prompting a muffled groan from Olaf, who's busy trying to carve a spoon. It's not going well. It has 2 handles. He says it's intentional. No one believes him. The goat is back inside. No one opened the door. No one remembers seeing it enter. And yet here it is, parked confidently in front of the fire again, chewing slowly and staring at a piece of bread someone accidentally dropped. You silently pray it doesn't try to eat the kindling. Again. Your task after the cloak is straw management, essentially the Viking version of spring cleaning. The sleeping mats need fluffing, the old bits thrown out and the new straw layered in fresh and thick. It's not glamorous, but it's oddly satisfying. There's something peaceful about restoring a sleep spot, removing the night's aches and repacking them with promise. You kneel by one mat and begin lifting handfuls of the old straw, tossing it into a woven basket. Some of it is damp, some of it smells suspiciously like soup. One handful contains what might be the remains of a feathered toy. You choose not to investigate further. The replacement straw is soft, golden and faintly sweet smelling. You pack it down gently, spreading it evenly, smoothing it into the fabric like you're frosting a cake made of field debris. Hilda hops by, gives a single approving cluck and continues her perimeter inspection. She takes her job seriously. As you work, the door creaks open and the wind brings with it a sharp breath of snow. Everyone near the hearth flinches. Your grandmother doesn't. She keeps weaving like she didn't just get smacked in the face by an Arctic breeze. A neighbour steps in, bundled in thick furs, holding a bundle wrapped in cloth and tied with coarse string. Trade. A bundle of dried fish is offered in exchange for cured hides. The deal is made with a few quiet words and a nod. No ceremony, no gold, no contracts. Just trust and mutual need. Barter is the true economy here. Fish for wood, wool for soapstone. Help stacking the firewood in return for a bit of honey if someone's bees didn't freeze. The kind of trading that makes everyone a little poorer and a little richer all at once. The fish are hung on a hook near the ceiling, where the smoke from the fire will do its work. They sway gently like sleepy sentinels. You add another log to the hearth and use the poker to shift the embers. Sparks swirl up and disappear. The warmth returns. Back to the straw. You finish 2 more mats, each one better than the last. Each one a small, quiet triumph. In a world where there are no medals for mending and no songs for domestic victories, this is still a kind of glory. You lay the last mat down and give it a small pat, like saying, "There, you matter." Your brother, having abandoned his dragon sculpture, is now pretending to be a fox in a straw den. You let him be. He'll grow out of it. Or he'll write sagas about it. Either way, it's part of the day. You glance around the room. Olaf has managed to carve something resembling a spoon, but now he's using it to flick crumbs at the goat. The goat remains unimpressed. Your grandmother is braiding dried nettle into thread. The children are playing with carved wooden animals near the bench. Someone hums a tune. Familiar. Repetitive. Comforting. Outside, the sky is still heavy with snow. Inside, the chores continue. You gather the old straw and carry the basket outside to the compost heap. The cold air slaps your face again. The snow crunches beneath your boots. The wind tugs at your cloak like a mischievous child. You dump the straw, stretch your back, and look up. The sky is brightening, but just barely. A faint smear of light behind a cloud. You imagine the sun trying to get through and giving up halfway. Typical. Back inside, the heat welcomes you again like a forgiving parent. The smell of the stew lingers. Someone has stirred it for no reason. Habit, maybe. Hope, more likely. You take your seat by the hearth and hold your hands out toward the flame. They're raw and red from straw work, but the warmth seeps in, quiet and slow. And in that moment, as you sit on a newly stuffed mat, cloak mended, chores behind you, chicken pecking gently at your bootlaces, you realise that this exact ordinary moment, is what survival looks like. No drama, no conquest, just straw, warmth, and a goat that won't leave. By the time the sun reaches its highest point, though in Viking winter that isn't saying much, the day is at its softest. There's no dramatic shift, no bells or horns, no sudden calls to action, just the faint familiar signs. The stew pot being stirred again for no reason, Olaf yawning like a bear waking from hibernation, the kids slowing down as their energy burns low. The longhouse doesn't stop, but it eases, it breathes. You're still sitting near the hearth, taking a short break after patching a row of sleeping mats and sealing the drafty wall corner. Your hands smell of moss and smoke, and there's a faint red welt across your palm from an overly spirited handful of straw. You glance at it. It stings a little. You take this as proof of your Viking credentials. A true Norse warrior earns their scars wherever they come, sword, sea, or straw. The fire crackles warmly in front of you, painting the benches and furs with flickering orange light. A few people have started tasks that require steadier hands and patience. Spinning wool, mending clothing, carving bone buttons, rethreading fishing lines. These are the things that keep a household not only alive but civilized. There's no glory in them, no sagas sung, but everyone knows that warm clothes and secure boots can be the difference between winter and never winter again. Your grandmother, never idle, is at her post again, weaving reeds into a new basket. She moves slowly, her fingers worn but precise, threading and twisting and pulling with a rhythm that seems older than the longhouse itself. You've never seen her rush. You suspect the concept is foreign to her. Hilda snoozes nearby. The chicken, having thoroughly patrolled the interior and judged all humans present, has curled into a tidy ball of feathers on top of a fur pile. Every so often she twitches in her sleep. You like to imagine she dreams of grain. The goat, on the other hand, is wide awake and in a philosophical mood. It has positioned itself near the doorway like a bouncer, staring meaningfully at people as they pass. At one point, it blocks Olaf from exiting and forces him into a gentle staring contest. Olaf eventually loses and detours through the back. You help your cousin with a repair next, a cracked wooden ladle. It's not a pretty tool, but it served the stew faithfully for seasons. The handles split just enough to leak broth. Together you wrap it with sinew, heating the binding to seal it tight. When finished, the ladle looks like it's been through a few battles and won every one. You pass it back with quiet pride. Lunch arrives in the most Viking way possible, without announcement or ceremony. Just the steady appearance of bowls, the scraping of ladles, the shared moment of dipping bread into something that's probably part stew, part porridge, and possibly part science experiment. No one complains. Hunger is a better seasoning than salt. You eat seated cross-legged near the fire, savouring each bite. The warmth spreads from your stomach outward, loosening your shoulders, slowing your thoughts. The longhouse around you seems to echo that feeling, simmering instead of boiling, humming instead of drumming. After the meal there's a lull. People stretch out on benches, lean against beams, take comfort in the creak of the timbers above, and the smell of herbs drying near the rafters. A baby fusses softly and is soothed with the rhythmic rock of a cradle foot. The spoon carver resumes his latest attempt. Today the spoon has antler inlay. It's ambitious, probably doomed. Admirable though, you're tasked with organising the herb shelf. At first glance, it looks like a squirrel's personal hoard. Bundles tied with fraying twine, pouches labelled in someone's guesswork runes, fragments of bark, dried berries, and something that might be bear fat. Possibly goat. Possibly just old butter. You begin sorting. Mint to the left, juniper to the right, yarrow in the centre, because it always ends up there anyway. There's something comforting in the work. The herbs carry summer's memory, scents of sun-warmed fields, of bees humming lazily, of warm dirt and green things. Each bundle tells a story. This one gathered after the first frost, that one picked during a full moon, this pouch a gift from the trader with the missing finger. Historians still argue whether Viking herbal knowledge was scientific, spiritual, or somewhere in between. Here, kneeling in front of your grandmother's carefully organised chaos, you know it's both. Medicine and memory, leaves and lore. You finish the shelf and step back. It's still a little wild, it always will be. But now the time isn't arguing with the tansy, and the dried mushrooms aren't in danger of becoming socks. You reward yourself with a moment beside the fire, watching the light play across the polished iron cauldron. The stew bubbles once, possibly twice. You decide it's best not to check. A storyteller begins, an older man with a beard that looks like it remembers every winter since the glaciers left. His voice is soft but carries. The story is of a fox who stole the hammer of Thor and traded it for a wheel of cheese. There are riddles, there are goats, there is confusion. It's not a saga with deep lessons. It's a nap-wrapped-in-words kind of tale. Everyone leans closer, even if their hands keep working. You half listen, half daydream, of warmer places, of ships with striped sails, of sitting on a cliff watching the stars. You hear laughter and know you missed the punchline. Hilda clucks. The goat burps. The fire hisses softly as a wet log crackles into place. Someone's stitching a tunic behind you. Someone else is oiling a bowstring. A child whispers something about giants under the floorboards. No one disagrees. You wonder if the floor creaks more when they're awake. The day stretches gently, and you stretch with it. Your legs unfold, your arms go overhead, your back pops, quietly, like a polite drum. You lie down just for a moment, arms folded beneath your head, staring up at the rafters. You trace the knots in the wood with your eyes. You notice a small spider moving across a beam, patient and sure, spinning a web that will no doubt be knocked down tomorrow and rebuilt again the next. It feels symbolic. You close your eyes, and for one long breath the world is simple. Warmth, straw, stories. You've done your part today. Not everything, but enough. And that, like the fire, like the story, like the heartbeat of the house itself, is steady and enough. The late afternoon in the longhouse is a quiet kind of golden. Not that there's much sun this far north, especially in winter. The sun seems more like a shy guest than a host. But some light does filter in. Thin beams slip through the high smoke hole above the fire, catching in the dust motes, dancing on woolen cloaks and worn wood like glimmers of warmth pretending to be summer. You've just finished your herb sorting duties, your hands still tingling faintly from brushing up against dried nettle. There's a bit of thyme stuck in your sleeve, which you leave there because, honestly, it smells nice. You stretch your legs and let your back pop gently as you lean against the central support beam, one of the oldest and sturdiest things in the house, besides your grandmother and the goat. This is the time of day when things slow but never stop. Some people rest, others reset. Near the benches, one of the teenagers is practicing spinning thread. She's dropped the spindle 3 times already, and every time she does, she mutters the same curse under her breath. You admire her consistency. Across the room, 2 elders play a quiet game using pebbles and a carved wooden board that's seen more winters than you have. No one knows the rules. and they refuse to explain. It's part of the mystique. You, naturally, are assigned one of the most elite and glamorous jobs of the day, sock darning. Yes, you, valiant Viking, survivor of the night, conqueror of straw beds, are mending holes in the woolen foot tubes. There's a basket beside you filled with socks in varying states of distress, some with holes at the toes, some with frayed heels, and one that looks like it lost a battle to a raccoon. You grab your darning mushroom, a lovely little wooden tool shaped, of course, like a mushroom, and set to work. Your needle slides in and out of the wool, the rhythm hypnotic. Thread, pull, loop, check. Again, your fingers grow steady, row. Your eyes start to lose focus, but in that dreamy, peaceful way that only slow work can bring. Beside you, Olaf plops down with a bowl of something he's not supposed to have. Possibly fermented berries. He doesn't offer you any, but he does give you a solemn nod as he sits, which in Viking terms means, we have both seen things. You continue sewing. He continues chewing. Every so often he hiccups. You ask if he's all right. He says, "The goat tried to challenge me again." You look at the goat. The goat looks back. It does not blink. You return to your sock. The light continues to shift. Dust spirals lazily in the beams. The fire sighs, sending a single lazy spark upward that disappears before it reaches the ceiling. Someone adds another log. The warmth pulses outward. Your grandmother walks by, checks your stitching, nods once, and walks away without a word. This is the equivalent of a standing ovation. A small group near the door is carving new runes into a practice board. Not official ones, just practice. The younger boy keeps carving the rune for ox over and over, which is beginning to look less like a rune and more like a fancy fish. No one corrects him. Art is art. Meanwhile, the goat has found a new interest in the fish rack. This is problematic. The fish are drying peacefully above the fire, and the goat, perhaps bored with its usual surroundings, is now trying to figure out how to jump onto a bench, then to a stool, and then, somehow, to fish paradise. Your cousin sees the goat mid-climb and calmly moves the stool. The goat stands frozen on the bench, confused but not defeated. It turns around with exaggerated dignity and walks away like the whole thing was your idea. You finish another sock. This one had a heel that was nearly more whole than wool, but now it looks sturdy enough to trek across half a fjord. You toss it in the dung pile with no small amount of pride. The room hums softly with activity. Children are stacking wooden blocks near the hearth. Two women are discussing the merits of goose fat versus bear grease as a skin salve. A man is fixing the leather straps on his boots, muttering to himself like the laces personally offended him. You look out through the small slit window. The snow has started again. Fine. Powdery flakes drift from the sky like sleep falling sideways. The wind is still calm, so the snow floats downward in slow spirals, gathering quietly on the woodpile and the fence posts outside. The world is being covered again, softened. You hear a soft snore. It's not Bjorn this time, it's Hilda. The chicken is asleep again, head tucked into her feathers, body rising and falling gently with each breath. Somehow, she's made a nest out of someone's hooded cloak. You suspect it belonged to Olaf. You decide not to tell him. You darn one more sock. It's small, probably your brother's. It has a hole right in the middle of the toe exactly where you'd expect it. You fix it with a tight lattice of neat stitches. It looks like armour, woolly, foot-specific armour. You hand it off to him, and he beams as if you just carved him a new sword. You stretch again. Your hands ache now, but in that good, full way, like muscles after a long walk or your stomach after a third bowl of stew. You've created something, fixed something, helped something endure just a bit longer. Historians still debate how much of Viking life was spent in war versus work, but here, now, you know the truth. It's mostly socks and goats and stew and fixing the things that matter, quietly, with calloused hands and gentle care. The longhouse is quieter now. People have finished their tasks. Some are leaning against beams, nodding off. Others have begun telling riddles, the kind that make no sense but still cause laughter. Your cousin asks, "What has no tongue but tells no lies?" Someone guesses, "An axe." Someone else says, "A silent husband." Everyone laughs, especially the women. The stew is stirred once more. The fire crackles, the light fades, and you fold your hands in your lap, rest your head back against the beam, and watch the dust dance above the hearth. You did good work today, even if it was just socks, especially because it was just socks. Evening in the longhouse unfolds like wool unravelling. Slowly, quietly, and with the distinct scent of smoke and onions lingering in the air. There's no sudden hush, no bell that chimes. The shift happens gradually, with a collective softening of voices, a slowness of footsteps, and the fire casting longer shadows across the packed earth floor. The day's business is winding down. You can feel it in your shoulders, in the loosened grip of hands once busy with tools, and in the eyes of those seated by the fire, half focused on the flames and half on their own drifting thoughts. You are among them, perched on your newly refilled straw mat with your cloak draped around your shoulders like a worn flag. It still smells faintly of moss from your earlier draft ceiling escapade, but it's warm, and the seams you stitched this morning are holding. Small victories, the kind you measure in comfort rather than coin. Across from you, Olaf is carving another spoon, or attempting to. It may yet become a spatula. He hasn't decided. He's chewing on a twig at the same time, which makes him look like a very large beaver with craft ambitions. You nod approvingly. He grunts in return, Viking for, "I'm fine, stop watching me." The stew is bubbling again, its fourth reincarnation of the week, perhaps now qualifying as ancestral. No one knows what the original ingredients were anymore. It has absorbed the essence of every meal, every bone, and every crumb added to it like a culinary family tree. The smell is deeply comforting, or, at the very least, familiar. Hilda the chicken is already tucked in. She's claimed a spot near the hearth, pressed into a cradle of cloaks and warmth, her feathers puffed up like she's preparing to hatch a nap. Every so often she twitches, probably dreaming of worms or revenge. The goat, true to form, has taken up residence at the far corner of the house. It is chewing something that does not belong to it. You decide not to intervene. Wisdom means choosing your battles, and this one would be lost before it began. The house is settling. Not just the people in it, but the building itself. The timber walls groan gently, warmed by fire and the press of bodies. The straw rustles as people adjust their beds. The rafters creak now and then, whispering old stories in a language only wood and wind understand. You wrap your arms around your knees and listen, not actively, just passively, the way you listen to a river or a storm. The longhouse hums with the sound of the low conversation, of breath and broth and small things being put away. A tunic folded, a bowl stacked, a knife sheathed. Someone begins to hum. It's not a song exactly, more like a tone, repeated, reshaped by memory. You recognise it. A lullaby your grandmother used to sing while grinding grain. No words, just melody. Everyone knows it, even those who pretend they don't. And then the story begins. The same old man, half beard, half blanket, clears his throat. No one asks him to speak. He just does, as naturally as the fire gives off heat. His voice is quiet but full, like it was made for longhouses and winter nights. Tonight's tale is of a woman named Freydis, who was said to have once wrestled a storm into stillness. Not with magic, but with words. She shouted at the sky until the thunder gave up. She traded her boots for an apple. She found a ship lost in mist by walking backward and listening to birds. The details don't always line up. They never do. That's part of the charm. Historians still argue whether Freydis was a real person, the old man says, chuckling. But if she wasn't, then someone ought to have been. The room chuckles with him. The children move closer to the fire, to the warmth, to the sound. Some rest their heads on folded arms. One chews absent-mindedly on a crust of bread that may or may not be from lunch. The rhythm of the story is what matters. The loop of sentences, the pauses at just the right time, the little look he gives when he's about to lie for effect. Outside, the wind begins to pick up again. Not a storm, but something preparing to be one. The thatch rustles softly overhead. Snow brushes against the walls like a gentle animal. Inside, your stomach is warm from stew. Your limbs are heavy with the day's labour. Your eyelids drift lower, but you fight them, not ready yet to miss the end of the story. It's not about what happens. You already know how it ends. It's the getting there that counts. The fire pops. Someone stirs the coals. The goat yawns, or sneezes, possibly both. The story comes to its final line. Freydis climbed the tallest hill in her village, stared into the sea and whispered, "Tomorrow I'll learn how to walk on waves." Then she turned around and went home. Silence. Not dramatic. Just complete. Then a soft exhale from the crowd, a small clap, a smile. The storyteller sips his broth and shrugs, as if to say, "It's not my best, but it'll do." The rest of the night continues slowly. You help tuck in the younger children, placing cloaks over shoulders, adjusting straw bundles under heads. One of them grabs your hand and says, "Tell me a story." You whisper one. Not as good as Freydis, but about a goose who wanted to be a squirrel. It ends with a pinecone wedding. They fall asleep before the punchline. You return to your mat. The fire dims now, really dims down to embers. It glows red instead of gold, low and even. The light dances against the underside of the roof, faint and sleepy. Everyone is lying down now. The goat too, even Olaf, especially Olaf. You curl up under your cloak, shifting just enough to find the sweet spot in the straw. Your bones feel heavier now, not tired, anchored. The sounds of night return, softer than before. No snores yet, just breath, just the occasional sigh. And outside, the wind makes a low, steady sound like it's trying to sing along. You close your eyes. You dream of hilltops and waves, and of a woman named Freydis who shouted at the sky and won. Night inside the Viking longhouse isn't just the absence of light, it's an atmosphere, a full-bodied hush that stretches from one timber beam to the next. There's no formal bedtime, no rulebook handed down by a chieftain. Instead, sleep arrives gradually, like the snow outside, falling in layers, covering the day's noise in silence. You lie stretched out on your straw mat, your patched-up cloak pulled tight around your shoulders. It's warm, more or less. The corner where the goat stepped on it earlier is still damp, but you've decided to pretend that's just added insulation. The fire has died down to low red embers, crackling every so often like it's reminding the room it's still there. Just quieter now. The longhouse breathes with you. Dozens of bodies shifting, sighing, snoring. You hear someone mumble in their sleep. A spoon drops. A child somewhere whispers something soft and silly. You smile into the straw. You're not sure exactly what time it is. Vikings didn't have alarm clocks. Time is counted by the fire's breath, by the heaviness of your limbs, by the way your thoughts begin to wander. You curl slightly, folding one leg over the other, pulling your wool-lined sleeve over your hand. It's always that one thumb that refuses to warm up. Around you, the room has settled into a sort of collective nest. Bundles of straw have been kicked into every corner. Cloaks and fur wraps are draped like personal tents over each sleeper. You count at least 3 people snoring in 3 different rhythms. Together, they sound like some kind of ancestral music, one that only plays when you've chopped enough wood and stirred enough soup. Hilda the chicken is asleep beside your knee. She's tucked herself into a ball so perfect you suspect she's trained in the decorative arts. Occasionally she peeps softly in her dreams, possibly about corn, possibly about conquest. The goat is also asleep, but not where it should be. Earlier someone tried to shoo it out of the prime spot near the hearth. The goat stared at them until they lost confidence and backed away. Now it snores with its face pointed at the coals like a fur-clad philosopher communing with flame. You adjust your position. There's always one straw stalk that finds the precise place under your back to cause maximum discomfort. You try shifting, doesn't help. You try rotating, somehow worse. Eventually you accept your fate and lie still. Viking resilience isn't just about battle, it's about straw management. A quiet conversation drifts across the room. Two elders murmuring about weather signs, about how the wind changed direction before the snow began, about how their joints ache a little more than usual. Their voices are low, soothing, like waves brushing the shore of a thought. You let the sound wash over you. Someone laughs, just once. A sleepy, breathy chuckle. Then silence again. You close your eyes and let your mind wander. You picture the longhouse from above. Just a simple structure in the snow, glowing faintly with the fire inside. Smoke curling from the top. Light sneaking out through the cracks. A heartbeat in the cold. You imagine the trees surrounding it, heavy with snow. You imagine foxes moving through the underbrush, leaving no sound. You imagine the stars above, watching everything, silent and patient. You roll onto your side, cheek pressed against the back of your arm. There's a comfort in that. The feel of your own body wrapped around itself. You tuck your knees up. Your toes find the warm spot in the mat where you were lying earlier. It's easy to forget that this life is harsh. Because in this moment, it doesn't feel harsh. It feels held. It feels earned. The longhouse isn't just shelter. It's memory, structure, survival. Every log was placed by hands you might have known. Every beam was lifted in a community effort. Every corner blessed by shared breath and shared food and shared stories. You think of that story again, Freydis, who shouted at a storm until it changed direction. The old man told it earlier around the fire, and you didn't catch all the words. But you remember the rhythm, the way his voice dropped low when she stood on the cliff, and the sea answered her without words. Historians still argue whether Freydis was real. Some say she's just another name in the mist of Norse myth. Others believe she walked among real people, raised real children, and one day decided that shouting at clouds was as good a strategy as any. Either way, she lingers in your mind like a shadow stitched to the edge of your thoughts. A gust of wind groans outside. The wooden walls creak in response, not fearfully, but in conversation. The house speaks its own language. It knows how to bend without breaking. You hope you've learned the same. Your brother stirs beside you. You glance over. He's pulled half his cloak over his face the way he always does when it gets too bright, even when the brightness is only the firelight. You reach out and nudge the rest of it into place. He grumbles something that might be thanks, or might be goat. You're not sure. Either way, he stays asleep. You lie back down, eyes open again. The fire flickers one last time, as if exhaling. Around the longhouse, people are still. Some mouths are open, some hands are curled in fists, some legs stretch out like they forgot they belong to someone. But all are warm, all are here. You think of summer, of the river near your home, cold and fast, the way your feet felt when you first jumped in. You think of fishing trips that turned into swimming trips, of laughing so hard you couldn't climb out, of someone bringing dried fish as a snack and everyone pretending to enjoy it. You think of bread, not today's hard crusts, but your grandmother's special batch, warm, round, thick with honey. You remember stealing an extra piece and blaming the goat. Everyone knew. No one punished you, not seriously. You think of sleep as something earned, a kind of reward for carrying your piece of the world all day and setting it down gently. You hear a deep exhale, someone finally letting go. You feel your own breath start to slow. The straw beneath you no longer pokes. Or maybe it still does, and you just don't care. Your mind drifts further. You're back on the riverbank. You're floating in a boat made of wool and memory. The stars above blink once, twice, and then go still. And you drift, not away from the longhouse, but deeper into it, into warmth, into quiet. into everything you did today, everything that brought you here, every pot stirred, every sock mended, every moment shared. Sleep takes your hand and doesn't pull. It just walks beside you, and you let it. You don't remember falling asleep. One moment, you are lying there listening to the fire whisper its final lullabies, and the next, your eyes open to the faintest morning light creeping in through the cracks in the longhouse walls. Not a dramatic sunrise, just a quiet blue suggestion that day is returning. The air is cold. You can feel it before you move. The kind of cold that settles on your cheeks, bites at your nose, and makes the inside of your cloak feel like a heated palace by comparison. Your breath rises in a thin cloud, and somewhere across the room, someone groans as they realise they'll have to leave their cosy straw nest eventually. But not yet. You stay still for another minute, maybe 5. Your muscles ache, but in that honest way that says you did something worth doing yesterday. You stretch one leg, then the other, then immediately regret it because you brush your toes against a patch of very cold floor. The goat is awake before anyone else, of course. It's already standing near the door like some kind of early morning sentinel, chewing on something that may or may not be part of a curtain. No one's sure when it wakes up. Some believe it doesn't sleep at all. Others think it simply waits for its moment to reclaim dominance over the household. Hilda, however, is still blissfully asleep. She's huddled into the crook of someone's elbow. They're both breathing in sync, a duet of soft inhales and slower exhales. You make a mental note to steal that sleeping spot tomorrow. It looks very warm. You sit up, slowly. Your joints pop. Your spine sends a crackle of sound like firewood catching flame. You wince and smile at the same time. Morning in a Viking longhouse is a symphony of aches and whispered curses, but it's also a celebration. If you're awake, you made it. And that's always worth something. Olaf is still asleep. His cloak is covering most of his face, and he's curled around a wooden bowl like it's a newborn baby. You consider waking him. Then you consider that he might snore louder awake than asleep. You let it go. The fire has dwindled to cold ash and stubborn coals, so naturally you become the first volunteer to restart it. Not because anyone asked, just because you're the one with fingers warm enough to hold the tinder. That, and the goat is watching you, judging you, probably wondering why the fire isn't already blazing. You kneel by the hearth. The stone floor is freezing beneath your knees, but your hands move by habit. You arrange the wood in a teepee shape. Dry twigs first, then the slivers of birch bark. You lean close, blow gently, whisper encouragement to the coals, and it happens. A spark, then a glow, then the first lick of flame. It grows quickly, eagerly, like it's been waiting for you. Within minutes the room begins to warm. Not much, not fast, but enough. Faces turn toward it, even in sleep. Bodies shift. The goat nods as if approving your work. You nod back. Respect is mutual. You set a pot of snow to melt. It will take time, but water is life, and tea, and soup, and all the other things that make mornings bearable. You stir the coals with a stick, watching as the flames lick higher, licking your chilled fingers with heat. People begin to wake. First the children, rubbing their eyes and blinking at the light like small woodland creatures. Then your grandmother, sitting up with the grace of someone who's been doing this longer than the walls have been standing. She doesn't speak. She just nods. You nod back. Someone passes you a hunk of bread, stale, but it softens near the fire. You eat slowly, savouring every bite like it's part of a feast. In Viking life, the first meal of the day is quiet, deliberate, more about warmth than flavour. The stew pot is still full from last night. You stir it lazily. It has now passed from meal to relic, taking on the sacred, sour, sweet scent of every dinner since the first frost. You ladle out a portion into a bowl, hand it to Olaf as he finally sits up and mumbles, "Is it morning already?" You don't answer. The bowl is your answer. More chores await. More repairs. More straw to be fluffed and fish to be checked. The snow has stopped, which means someone will go outside soon to check the traps. Someone else will fetch kindling, and someone, probably you, will refill the water bucket with melted snow, but no one moves too quickly. Morning routines are like longhouse lullabies in reverse, slow, warm, full of repetition and small rituals. You wipe out bowls, fold sleeping cloaks, adjust bundles of herbs that shifted in the night. The rhythm returns. Someone cracks a joke about how the goat has better sleeping arrangements than most of the family. Someone else says the goat earns it. A short debate follows over whether the goat once saved a child from a falling beam. The child in question is now a teenager who says that's not how it happened. The goat offers no clarification. Your brother asks you to help him retie the straps on his boots. They're stiff with ice. You kneel beside him, fingers working carefully, pulling the leather taut, checking the knots. He doesn't say thank you, but he looks at you a second longer than usual. That's enough. Outside, the snow reflects what little light there is. Inside, the longhouse glows again. Not with firelight yet, but with motion, with voices rising, footsteps soft on straw, and laughter skipping across the rafters. The cold is still here, but so is the warmth, and so are you, alive, fed, useful, tired, but ready. You take another bite of bread, you stir the stew, you shoo the goat away from someone's mittens, and you smile, not because the day will be easy, but because you already know how to meet it, with a spoon, a cloak, and a patch of stubborn straw. The morning hours stretch out before you like a field freshly dusted with snow, clean, quiet, full of potential, and requiring effort to cross. With the longhouse gently humming to life again, you find yourself slipping back into the day's rhythm as if it never stopped. And in a way, it never really does. The Viking household isn't a place that wakes, it's a place that pauses. And now, the pause is over. After your small breakfast and your victory over fire and snow melt, you head toward your next task, checking the storage shelves. These aren't glamorous shelves. They're not carved with runes or lined with fur. They're sturdy, tucked into the darkest end of the longhouse, and built from wood that still carries the scent of sea salt from when it was first hauled ashore. You crouch low, squinting in the dim light as your fingers brush over sacks and jars, bundles and cords. There's a sack of dried fish, lighter than it should be. A jar of honey, thankfully untouched. Some onions, softening at the edges but still usable. You count each item not by number but by sound, by weight in your hand, by how it compares to yesterday. Vikings didn't have spreadsheets. They had memory and fingertips. You find a forgotten lump of cheese wrapped in waxed cloth. You sniff it, then sniff again. You decide it's best offer to Olaf. If it's good, he'll say it's terrible and keep it all. If it's bad, he'll call it bold and keep it all anyway. Your cousin joins you, checking the stock of candles. She holds up a stub that's been melted and remelted so many times it looks like a tragic wax caterpillar. You both laugh. She says, "We might need more bees." You say, "I'll talk to the goat." This is Viking comedy. The house continues to stir. A pair of young boys chase each other around a beam, giggling and slipping on the straw. One of them is wearing a helmet far too large for him. It slides down over his eyes, and he runs straight into the goat. The goat, predictably, does not move. It just turns slowly and stares. The boy falls dramatically. The goat remains unimpressed. Someone starts sharpening a blade, slow, scraping strokes on a whetstone, the kind of sound that makes your spine twitch with ancient reflexes. Not because of danger, just because you've heard that sound your entire life, and it always means something's being prepared. Whether it's a knife for cooking or a spear for fishing, the sound says, "Be ready." You take a moment to patch your cloak again. A small tear at the seam. Nothing urgent, but you've learned not to wait. Vikings don't get replacement cloaks easily. You thread your needle, pull the wool tight, and let the morning light guide your stitching. Historians still debate whether clothing repairs were done daily or weekly in Viking homes. But here now, you know the answer. Whenever you notice something needs fixing, and preferably before it falls off your shoulders in a snowstorm, midway through your sewing you hear a small commotion by the door. It's the trade party finally returning. 3 figures stomp in, covered in fresh snow, bundles on their backs, cheeks flushed from the cold. They stamp their boots, knock the slush from their cloaks, and are immediately mobbed by small children and curious goats. The scent of sea salt follows them in, along with something spicy. Maybe herbs, maybe just an unwashed traveller. You help unload their packs. Dried fish, seal meat, a few new flints, something that might be soap. One of them proudly presents a tiny carved charm, shaped like a bear with one ear missing. No one knows its purpose, but everyone touches it reverently anyway. It's the Viking way. The trade brought good news, no blizzards for the next 2 days. A neighbouring family sent greetings. There's a rumour of a boat returning early this spring. Hope in small bundles carried over snowy hills. Someone stokes the fire higher, and the stew is stirred yet again. You laugh and say, "Is this the 6th life of this stew?" Your grandmother answers, "7th. It reached enlightenment yesterday." Lunch comes earlier than usual, warm, shared, quiet. People lean in, talk low, share stories of the neighbouring village, of who got married, who fell through the ice but climbed out again, who insist they saw a whale from the forest. You chew slowly, letting the warmth fill more than just your stomach. After the meal, it's clean up again. You wipe down the bowls, dry them over the fire, stack them neatly on the shelf. You help fold the cloaks that were kicked off during sleep, beat the straw mats to fluff them, and hang up a few socks that had somehow made it into the stewpot vicinity. Vikings may be known for their raids, but their households are defined by these moments. Tidying, mending, maintaining. Your brother asks if you'll go outside with him to check the trapline. You sigh, look at the warm fire and say yes. Outside, the cold slaps you like a disapproving aunt, sharp and immediate. You pull your cloak tighter, adjust your scarf and begin the slow walk to the tree line. The snow crunches under your boots. The skies are dull grey, the kind that promises more snow later. The traps are simple, loop snares, baited pits, clever toggles tied with sinew. You check each one carefully. 2 are empty, 1 has sprung but nothing's inside. The last has caught a rabbit, small, quick-eyed, and now very still. You say a soft word more out of habit than ritual and gather it up. You return to the longhouse with red cheeks and colder fingers. Inside, the warmth welcomes you like a friend who saved your seat. The goat is sitting in front of the fire again. Olaf waves vaguely at you with a spoon. You pass the rabbit to your grandmother. She nods once and sets it aside. Tomorrow's stew will gain a new layer. The rest of the day stretches ahead, full of small duties and smaller moments. But for now, you sit, thaw your toes, and let the fire paint your face with gold. You don't need excitement. You've got warmth. You've got stew. You've got a goat who thinks it's in charge and a chicken who dreams of conquest. And most of all, you've got time. Afternoon in the longhouse doesn't announce itself with trumpets or sunshine. It simply arrives. One moment you're warming your hands by the fire after your walk through the snow, and the next, the light has shifted ever so slightly, slanting down through the cracks in the walls and casting longer shadows across the wooden beams. It's not brighter, just different, softer, as if the sun, like the rest of the household, is also trying not to disturb anyone. You shift your position near the fire, legs stretched out, hands cupped around a warm wooden bowl of broth. The stew is thinner now, someone added snow to make it stretch. The flavour is still there, but it's like a memory of the feast it once was. Still, it's warm. It fills the belly and fogs your breath. You sip slowly, savouring each mouthful like it's a reward for making it through the frozen morning. Around you, the house hums with quiet motion. The travellers who came in earlier are trading stories with the elders now, exchanging news from neighbouring villages in low tones. You catch fragments. Someone's ox had twins, someone else fell through a frozen lake and blamed a fish, and a ship from the east brought strange herbs that smell like old socks but apparently cure headaches. A group of children is playing a game involving carved bones and a piece of string. The rules are unclear, possibly invented on the spot, but the laughter is genuine. One of them is wearing half a cloak like a cape and insists he's a snow warrior. The goat appears unimpressed, which makes sense, as the goat is clearly the actual ruler of the house. You glance toward the far wall where a few people are working on repairs. One woman is patching a large hole in a fur blanket with leftover fabric, humming softly to herself. Another is weaving a new basket from reeds that were gathered back in the fall. You remember that day, a rare afternoon of sunshine, cold but dry, when everyone helped haul the bundles back from the marshes. That basket will carry food, herbs, or perhaps a cranky chicken in spring. Either way, it's a thread in the fabric of the household. You take your bowl to the wash bucket, rinse it in the warm water someone had thoughtfully set by the fire, and set it on the shelf. There's something comforting about the predictability of it all. Rinse, stack, fold, mend, stir. Like the beating of a heart. Simple, steady, essential. You grab a small tool and start carving. Just a bit of bone, left over from a roast, whittled down into something small and personal. Maybe it'll be a comb, maybe a bead, maybe nothing. The point isn't the outcome, it's the rhythm, the soft scrape, the feel of material yielding under your fingers, the creation of something from almost nothing. You sit by the fire as you carve, watching the embers shift and glow. Hildy approaches with great purpose, then settles directly onto your boot. You've been chosen, it's an honour. You nod solemnly. Your cousin joins you, working a strip of leather between her hands. She's making a new strap for her water flask. It snapped last week, and she'd had to carry it tucked under her arm ever since. You offer to hold the needle while she threads it. You chat about nothing, how the snow seems thinner this week, whether the stew will ever run out, whether the goat is secretly cursed. She thinks it might be. You suspect it's just mean. The goat sneezes, right on cue. You and your cousin share a look. Outside, the wind picks up again. A low whine against the wooden walls. The house shifts slightly, groaning as it adjusts. The door flaps once, then settles. A cold draft snakes along the floor, curling around ankles and disappearing into the dark corners of the room. Someone tosses another log on the fire. The warmth returns. You go back to your carving. You're making a spiral now, tight. Even lines curving into one another. You don't know what it'll be. Maybe it doesn't matter. Sometimes making something is enough. A soft voice begins to sing from the far end of the house. An old lullaby, barely louder than the fire. No one asks for it. No one interrupts. The singer's voice is raspy but strong, and you recognize the tune. It's about a fox who steals bread, tricks the moon, and befriends a lonely tree. It makes little sense, but it's beautiful. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, just to listen. The singing drifts through the room, winding between beams and blankets and bodies. Even the goat is still, probably pretending not to enjoy it. The carving slips from your hand. You pick it back up and run your thumb along the grooves. Not perfect, not even, but yours. Historians still debate what kinds of stories were sung in Viking homes, whether songs were reserved for rituals or sung casually in moments like this. But as the lullaby reaches its final lilting note, you know the truth. Songs happen when they're needed, not when they're scheduled. You open your eyes, the fire is low again. Not fading, just calm, content. You think about adding more wood, but someone else beats you to it. A quiet nod is exchanged, no words needed. The kind of coordination that only comes from living together, working together, surviving together. The wind howls again, this time longer. But the house doesn't flinch. It creaks. Yes, it shifts, but it stands. Because it was built to stand. Just like you, just like all of you. The bowl is dry now, the carving is done. Hilda has moved to someone else's boot. You lean back, stretch your arms, and feel your body settling again. The afternoon is still young. There are still traps to check, cloaks to fold, songs to be sung. But for now, you sit beside the fire, warmed by more than flame, by effort, by kinship, by the knowledge that in this place, on this day, you have enough. And maybe, just maybe, that's everything. There's a time of day in the Viking longhouse that comes just before evening, not quite night, not quite afternoon, when the world feels like it's holding its breath. That's where you are now. The chores are mostly done. The stew has simmered down to its final version. The fire crackles softly, a little louder now that the conversations have faded. Even the goat miraculously seems contemplative. It stands by the far wall, staring at a knot in the timber, as though it holds the secrets of the universe. You've moved to a different corner of the house, sitting near the racks where herbs are hung to dry. The scent here is earthy and sharp. Sage, dried garlic, crushed juniper. Some of it will be added to meals, some to medicine, and some, mysteriously, just seems to hang here year-round, like houseplants that take themselves too seriously. In your lap is a small patch of cloth, a bit of linen you've been embroidering since the first frost. The design is uneven, mostly spirals and stars, and the colours don't match perfectly, but it's yours. And tonight, you finally add the last few stitches. You lean closer to the firelight, fingers moving carefully, the needle's rhythm as steady as your own heartbeat. Stitch, pull, adjust, repeat. Someone sits beside you. Your uncle, maybe, or a cousin twice removed. It doesn't matter. He hums under his breath, a low, tuneless sound like a boatman murmuring to the sea. You don't speak, just share the space. That's how people in the longhouse talk most of the time, through presence, not words. There's movement in the rafters, a soft shuffle, a chicken, a cat. Maybe just wind. Maybe the house settling its old bones. You tie off the final thread and lean back, stretching your arms until your shoulders pop with satisfaction. It's a good pop, the kind that says you've made something, finished something. That matters here. In a life where tasks are never done, finishing even a square of cloth is a quiet act of triumph. You pass the fabric to your grandmother. She squints at it, turns it over, touches the stitching with the tip of her calloused finger. Then she nods once, the same way she did when you first learned to tie your own cloak. You smile. That's all the approval you'll get. It's also all you need. The fire is brighter now. Someone's added more wood, and it lights the beams overhead in soft gold. Shadows stretch longer across the floor, making the longhouse look even bigger, even older. You think, briefly, about all the stories these walls have heard, all the laughter, all the crying, all the secrets whispered in the dark. There's a tug at your sleeve, a small child, barely walking, eyes round as the moon. They hold out a carved figure, tiny, crude, but clearly meant to be a horse. You take it, nod gravely and say, "A very fine warrior beast." They beam, then wander off, mission accomplished. You place the horse in your lap. It stares up at you with one eye much bigger than the other. A masterpiece. More people gather by the fire now. Someone has brought out a game board, a rough wooden slab with small stones in rows. The rules are simple and vague. Disputes are frequent and loud. You watch for a while, enjoying the spectacle more than the strategy. Your brother sits next to you and nudges your elbow. He doesn't say anything, you nudge him back. That's the conversation. The stew is offered again, this time in smaller bowls. Everyone takes a bit, even if they're not hungry. Not because they need it, but because it's shared. Because it's warm. Because saying no to the final stew is like declining a hug. It's just not done. You sip slowly. It's mostly broth now, but there's something about it. Maybe the trace of rabbit from earlier. Maybe the tang of juniper. It tastes like memory. The air outside has changed again. You can feel it in your bones. Colder now. The kind of cold that presses in around the doorframe and sneaks under cloaks. Someone moves to stuff more straw into the cracks. You assist, tucking a bundle into a gap near the bench, where the wind always seems to find its way in. Historians still debate how Viking longhouses were insulated, how they kept warm, how they trapped heat, how people slept without freezing. They write theories in books. But you know the truth. You keep warm by staying close, by feeding the fire, by wrapping yourself in stories, in songs, in work done well and together. The light dims further. Night is returning. People begin laying out bedding again. Not fresh, just rearranged. Cloaks become pillows. Blankets become walls. The floor becomes a patchwork of fur and straw and familiar footprints. Someone starts a story. Not a grand saga this time. A short one. About a girl who lost her mitten and found a mountain instead. About a raven who knew her name. It's told with a smile. The kind of story that makes no sense in the daylight but feels true after stew. The fire cracks. A child giggles, the goat snorts, and still the wind howls, but no one seems to mind, because inside this longhouse, inside this living, breathing body of wood and straw and fire and laughter, you're all here, and that's enough. You lie back again, let your eyes close, let the weight of the day slide off your shoulders like a wool cloak, let the sounds become softer, let the last spoon clink against the last bowl. Let the room dim, let the fire whisper, let your heart beat slow to match the rhythm of the house. You made something today. You helped. You were warm. You were seen. And now, as the night wraps itself around the beams and the goat curls into its self-assigned throne, and someone sings just one more line of that lullaby, you fall asleep with a smile, and the crooked horse still in your lap. The longhouse has grown so quiet now that even the fire hesitates to crackle. Its glow is a soft orange cradle, barely enough to light the outlines of the sleeping forms scattered across the straw-covered floor. You lie beneath your cloak, eyes half-lidded, watching shadows play across the beams. Your body is heavy in the most pleasant way, like the earth itself has decided to hold you in place. Evening, then night, then something deeper. It's not just sleep that settles here. It's something older than sleep, a kind of stillness so complete, so full of breath and memory and warmth, that you almost forget time is still moving. You barely shift. No one does. The house has entered its own form of dreaming. You listen to the rhythm of breath, to the slow inhale and exhale of the cousin beside you, to the creak of old wood expanding and settling, to the wind pressing gently against the walls. Less of a threat now, more of a lullaby sung through the cracks. Somewhere, someone mumbles in their sleep. A name, maybe, or a prayer. It's too soft to catch, but it lingers like fog. You glance across the room at the goat. It is, somehow, asleep, with its eyes half open, curled into a surprisingly symmetrical ball. Its belly rises and falls. You wonder if it dreams, and if so, of what? A kingdom of hay, endless shoelaces to chew, a world without humans. Next to the goat, Hilda the chicken has claimed the fur-lined mat that once belonged to the youngest child. She sleeps undisturbed, perhaps out of boldness, perhaps out of tradition. Everyone knows the chicken gets what she wants. That's just longhouse law. The air is cool now, not biting, just honest. You breathe it in, slowly, letting the chill fill your lungs, then melt on its way out. Your breath fogs slightly in the dark, disappears, and returns with the next inhale. You shift under your cloak just enough to loosen the bit of straw poking your ankle. Of course, it pokes the other ankle instead. You give up. This is the Viking condition. Someone turns over in their sleep, causing the wooden floor to creak under their weight. No one wakes. No one even stirs. And still the fire burns, steady, low, patient. You think of the day. The stew that changed flavour 5 times. The patch you stitched for your cloak that's already come loose again. The rabbit you carried back from the trap line. The bowl you washed with snowmelt water so cold it made your fingers ache. And all of it, the smallness of it, the plainness, feels holy. Because there was warmth. Because there was food. Because no one froze. No one bled. No one went hungry. It was a perfect Viking day. And now it has ended the same way they all should. With quiet and firelight, and bodies safe beneath cloaks that smell of wood smoke and wool, and a little bit of stew. Your eyes close, not tightly, just enough to blur the last glimmer of flame into soft gold. You think of Freydis again, the woman who shouted at storms, whose name slipped between truth and myth, who walked backward into fog and returned with the names of trees no one remembered, who taught the sea to listen and the wind to hush. You smile, not because you believe every part of her story, but because you believe in the people who passed it down, who kept it alive with breath and fire and needle and thread, with stories carved into bone and sung into night. You're one of them now. You patched the cloak. You stirred the stew. You held the bowl when hands were cold. Historians still argue whether Viking life was one of hardship or harmony, whether their longhouses were full of laughter or just noise, whether their stories were remembered or invented. But you know the truth. It's all of it. The hard, the soft, the quiet, the loud, the endless cold and the perfect warmth that follows it. Life wrapped in layers of wool and ritual. A shared pot of stew that never really runs out. A goat that always sleeps closer to the fire than anyone else. A chicken that nests in the middle of everything and somehow makes it all work. This is Viking life. Not the swords, not the sagas, not the ships that sail to distant lands, but the slow breath of a house at rest, the patch you made, the stew you shared, the silence you helped weave, thread by smoky thread. You curl deeper into your mat. The cloak shifts softly over your shoulders. The fire pulses once more, and sleep finds you again. Not like a wave crashing in, but like a tide rising around you, gentle and sure. You're safe. You're tired. You've done enough. You've done well. And now, the house fades around you, slowly, gently, as if the very air inside has chosen sleep over movement. Your body feels lighter, even as it sinks deeper into the straw and wool. Each breath carries you further away from the sound of waking life. There is no more chatter, no more snoring. Not even the goat dares disturb this peace. The fire burns low, and its glow stretches softly across your skin. It doesn't flicker so much as it breathes, in slow rhythm with the longhouse. With you. Your heartbeat slows. The straw no longer pokes. The cold no longer matters. The stories swirl somewhere behind your eyelids now. Bits of tales, half remembered, half dreamed, spool together into sleep. Freydis on a hilltop. A goat wearing a crown. The stew that turned into a river. A fox that outsmarted the moon. Outside, the wind hushes itself. It brushes past the walls with the softness of a hand smoothing a blanket. Even the rafters seem to exhale, their creaks grown lazy and slow. You don't need to move. There's nowhere else to go. Everything you needed today you found. In the pot, in the patch, in the fire, in the breath of a room that held you without asking anything more than your being here. Tomorrow will come. There will be boots to fix, coals to rake, more stew to invent. But that's not for now. Now is for rest. Now is for being. Now is for sleep. Let it take you. Let it wrap you. Let it whisper. You are home. You are warm. You are whole. End of story. Sweet dreams.